Hello friends, welcome into the Cowboys Report presented by The Guild. I am Tom Downey, and we're going to start things off today with the latest Cowboys rumors. And first up, some more good news on one Randy Gregory. He has been fully cleared, 4 stars on this one. It's a fact. Gregory is now cleared to participate in practices and in games. It was really only a matter of time, but it's good timing for Randy since it comes just before the start of training camp. Again, he's good to go for practices and games. The NFL just wanted to see his full plan to make sure he stayed clean, and they clearly liked it. A very quick time frame there is a very good sign for Gregory. Now it becomes, can he A, make the roster and make an impact? I think he makes the roster. As for the massive impact that some of you think he's going to have, well, I'm not quite prepared to buy into that just yet. But Gregory in good shape now to keep progressing forward as he looks to make the Cowboys roster. All right, next up is Maliek Collins on the PUP list. This one's, we're going to give it 4 stars. It's not official yet, but Jason Garrett did say that that was probably going to be the case. And training camp starts, at least the practices do, in 2 days. So I don't anticipate Collins going from being a couple of weeks away to 2 days later being good to go. So they like the outcome here, and that's why we're giving it 4 stars. He will be on the physically unable to perform list to start the season and to start training camp as he recovers from yet another foot injury, and that continues to lessen the depth and talent on that Cowboys defensive line. David Irving suspended, Collins on the PUP list, Jihad Ward, Dayton Jones. Congratulations, you are now perhaps your top 2 defensive tackles for the Dallas Cowboys, and then it's a bunch of Jags, just a guy, Brian Price, Richard Ash, Antoine Woods, Daniel Ross, and Lewis Neal. Not ideal there for the Cowboys up front on that defensive line. One player who should be back, though, is Terrance Williams. We'll give this one 3 stars. It does seem like he'll be ready to go for training camp. Now, Garrett said maybe he's not practicing necessarily on the very first day, but that he should be good to go and doesn't think he'll be on the PUP list. A good sign there for T. Will, who's had a very rough offseason overall with his arrest, with his broken foot, but that he'll be back for the early part of training camp is a big thing for Terrance Williams, because if he wants to start, he's got to get on the field. Hearns is likely one starter, Cole Beasley as well. Williams has to hold off the likes of Michael Gallup and Deontay Thompson if he wants to be a starter at wide receiver. So let me know, folks, if Dallas should start T. Will. Give me a Y for a yes and an N for a no. Frankly, I think the best case scenario is that T. Will actually isn't starting, because that means Hearns and Cole have fared well, and probably that one Michael Gallup has emerged early in camp, which is a very strong possibility for the young receiver out of Colorado State. We're going to move now to some more Earl Thomas talk, because of course we are, but we do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by The Guild. Visit stayguild.com and promo code ChatSports for 15% off your next stay. If you're coming to Dallas for a game, you got to stay with The Guild. All right, first up for Earl Thomas, is he, quote, done with the Seattle Seahawks? We'll give this one 2 stars. That was the new report coming out of today from Newy Scruggs, who says that Thomas will not report to training camp and that he is done with Seattle. And he's only going to report if/when he gets a new deal, and he thinks the deal will not come. Now, that part wasn't necessarily massive breaking news, because we knew that Thomas was probably going to hold out and that he was not happy with Seattle, but he's also reportedly going to sell his home in Seattle. Now, maybe it's all just a leverage game for Earl Thomas to try and get that big deal from Seattle, but here we are, a couple of days away from training camp starting, and there's more smoke about Earl Thomas wanting a trade, wanting out of Seattle. And I think the part that he's done with Seattle is the most important part, because I've always held the mindset that Thomas wants to get paid, and I think that's still the case here. He wants his big new contract, be it from the Seahawks, the Cowboys, or the Oakland Raiders, the new team that suddenly emerged here in the Earl Thomas talks. But I think it is worth mentioning here. I'll give it just the 2 stars. I'm not convinced he's done. All the money, if Seattle wants to offer him, that will go a long way to mend those fences, but it is worth continuing to monitor. So, folks, let us know if you want the Cowboys to trade for Earl Thomas. Give me an A for a yes and a B for a no. The big Earl Thomas report from last night was that there had been no Thomas trade talks since the NFL draft. That has now been conflicted. So we've got the old conflicting reports here. So we'll give this one just the 2 stars. Keep it firmly in that rumor category. Jane Slater of NFL.com says, no trade talks since before the NFL draft, which is weird because we know the Cowboys called Seattle about a trade, at least in round 3, and Seattle never called them back. So I guess it's not really a talk if you're only talking to yourself. Josina Anderson of ESPN, though, says Seattle and Dallas have had trade talks. So the old conflicting reports there. I think in reality, Dallas knows what Seattle wants. Seattle knows what Dallas is willing to give up. And in the end, it's all waiting on Seattle to decide, hey, are we going to give Earl Thomas a big contract? Or are we going to let him sit out of training camp? Or will we just trade him instead? So let me know what you guys would trade for Earl Thomas. I think a second-round pick gets the job done, especially if ET does not show up to camp in the next few days. Speaking of trades, how about a Malcolm Mitchell trade? I'm only going to give this one just the 1 star. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. The Patriots are shopping Malcolm Mitchell, who's coming off another, quote, knee procedure. Not a surgery. Sounds more like a scope because he's always hurt. Yeah, he's a former 4th-round pick and has showed flashes, but Malcolm Mitchell is not a number 1 guy. He's much more in the mold of a Terrance Williams or a Michael Gallup, best case scenario, maybe more like a Noah Brown. So I don't think Dallas needs to bring in Mitchell, and if that's the case, why would you trade for him? I don't think it makes sense for either side. I would be stunned if a deal went down. All right, next up, and if you follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDown, you saw this one yesterday. Maliek Collins versus Connor Williams for the left guard spot? No. Absolutely not. This one is fake news. Fansided put out their training camp battle for the Cowboys. They also listed Taco Charlton versus Tyron Crawford, which makes not great sense either. But this one made 0 sense. Guys, there is no competition at left guard. Maliek Collins is your right tackle. Connor Williams is your left guard, and Cam Fleming is your swing tackle. Unless there are injuries, that's how it's going to go. There is no battle right now. It's pretty much set in stone. Here's your offensive line. Tyron, Sewell, Frederick, Zach Martin, and Maliek Collins. Cam Fleming is your first guy off the bench at tackle. There is not going to be a battle for that left guard spot. It is set in stone. Folks, we do have the new Cowboys Report YouTube channel at chatsports.com/Cowboys TV. Head there. It'll take you right into the subscription page. 2K is the next benchmark. We're going to hit 1.5K here in a little bit as well, but 2K is the big one. So hit up that subscription button if you're a Cowboys fan. All of our Cowboys coverage is there, all in one spot. Subscribe today at chatsports.com/Cowboys TV. All right, on to our 8th rumor of the day, some mechanical changes for Dak Prescott. Well, 4 stars on this one as well. The Cowboys, and mainly Dak Prescott, are trying to tweak some of his footwork in particular, at least according to the report from ESPN today. Namely, Dak Prescott went to a quarterback camp led by Tom House, or I guess program, I should say, and the focus was the footwork. Trying to keep it calmer. He studied a lot of Tom Brady, how to keep his feet from dancing around and moving too much, and to keep them steady so he's not thrown off balance all the time. And they worked on the depth of his dropbacks to avoid a 5-step drop turning into a 6-step drop because he takes a pretty wide stance and a pretty wide drop back motion there. So all very minor things that won't always be super visible to the naked eye, but should help improve Dak Prescott's accuracy. And with his accuracy in mind, do you think Dak is the Cowboys' franchise quarterback? Give me a Y for a yes and an N for a no. I'm more along the lines of 3 stars that, yeah, he's going to be the franchise guy. He just needs to continue to improve, which should be expected entering year 3. And finally, do the Cowboys have an average secondary? I will give this one 2 stars. It comes to us from Pro Football Focus. They ranked all these starting secondaries in the NFL, and they put the Cowboys at 17th. And the key note here is yes and no. They grade based on last year. So based on last year, yeah, the Cowboys are an average secondary. But for this year, they're going to improve. So it's not quite set in stone, and even PFF said they should finish higher than 17th this year. A young, talented secondary. By the time we get to even just week 5, they're going to be above average, but they do still have some room to grow as we go along this offseason and training camp.